Hi there, I'm Brian LePere, online media editor for Salem Film Fest. And I'm here today with director David Sutherland, the man behind Kind Hearted Woman, which tells the story of Robin Poorbear, a Sioux Indian with a deeply intimate story about her struggle with abuse. So, uh, David, can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to look into this issue about a Native American woman and her struggles with abuse throughout her life?
Well, what very few people know is um, I actually did not want it to be a Native woman.
Oh,
I figured that most of the atrocities early on, like 100 years ago, whenever, that were committed against natives were probably caused by middle-aged white men like myself. So I had been missed abuse in my last two miniseries, The Farmer's Wife and Country Boys. It was in the backdrop. I decided I wanted to do something about it. And I work with rural mental health groups. I don't work for them, but I've done a lot of work for them after some of my films. And I decided that for various reasons I wanted to go to North Dakota. So through one of these groups that I had helped out with some public service announcements, I went to North Dakota and I went to a recovering battered women's group through these connections, women recovering in different stages. And I had the description on paper of each woman, but they wouldn't tell me their real names. And I didn't think that I was going to find the one I was looking for there, and I didn't. However, one major thing happened. I knew in this group there were two Native women, but you can never tell. There were 30 women, which is which. And I was trying my idea out and say, what did they think about it? And I showed samples of my last two miniseries. Well, the only woman I was really interested in, it turns out, happened to be Native. So I all of a sudden said to myself, well, I said, would you mind talking to me sometime at your reservation? And meanwhile, what I'm thinking about is, I'm a portraitist. I'm not an investigative reporter. I like the issue of abuse. I don't like it, but it's an important issue. I've missed it twice in my real life series, which take 4 or 5 years. I just never got it on film in the backdrop of this various stories. So what I thought about, do most people know a family or a Native family? In my films, you usually get so involved with them, like you're living in their skin because of all the audio, radio mics I use, where you actually feel like you know someone who happens to be Native. Not like, oh, here's an Indian or whatever, see how they run. It's really what I like you to do is root for them in their quest or struggle. So I knew this woman, various of these women had been abused. So I thought, this particular woman's Native, I don't want to do her, but if you wanted to put a face on somebody, well, do you really know anyone that happens to be Native, like Pocahontas? But yeah, what do we know about her? So I decided I'm going to do a Native woman, a film on a Native woman, and maybe her family, somebody recovering from abuse. So no one knows this, really. It's not in the PR of the film. And ultimately, I started to meet various Native women through battered women's shelters in North Dakota. What I found out along the way was that Amnesty International did a study that I think in North Dakota, maybe 2 out of 4 women on a reservation, Native women were 2 to 4 times more likely to have been raped or abused than any other group in whether the inner city, wherever. So I found subjects like that. What happened with this film when I finished it was I follow Robin. Her daughter gets abused. There's a trial. Everything happens. And it turns out that just as I finished the story, a story broke nationally about the abuse of all the reservations in the country, about the abuse on her tribe. New York Times, everywhere. So I had the perfect example. So now I have to own it and say, I'm a portraitist, but as it turns out, I've sort of become an investigative reporter. It is in Frontline, the TBS series, which is going to be April 1st and 2nd. But here at Salem, it's the first time I've shown it anywhere. I haven't even finished all of the second half. I have 1 week to do it.
Well, we surely appreciate that you took some time out to come and join us. You keep mentioning that in your particular style, you're a portraitist, and you, from what I understand, you really like to get in there and capture your subjects versus, like you said, in more of an investigative style. Can you explain a bit more what you mean when you say portraitist? What your particular style?
I'm looking to put a face on, like I'm getting older, and in the 60s and 70s, if you wanted to put a face on migrant workers, who could you think of? You could think of Cesar Chavez. He was the migrant workers. He led them, organized them. So if you were looking at family farmers, when I did the farmer's wife in Nebraska, I wanted you to have a sense of a face you could identify. It's not Henry Fonda. I mean, you have to be really old to see The Grapes of Wrath, and in that film, they already lost the farm. So that's what I set out to put a face. You go through it. That if you, at the end of the film, you're saying, how's Robin doing? How's her daughter Darian and her son Anthony doing? Then you've thought of them as people that happen to be native. But how do I do that? Well, they're very intimate. Like I might run 6 live radio mics, but this is in action scenes. This isn't done afterwards in a studio. And so I had, like in this film, I'll have more audio tracks than Apocalypse Now, which was a pretty wild film. Yeah, in a 5-hour miniseries. Do you know how long it's taken me to mix this? It's 6 months. 6 months.
Just with the audio.
That's why when kids or young filmmakers say, well, your films are intimate, or, well, why do they take so long? Well, you have to be out of your mind. I'm like a dinosaur because they're expensive and they take so long, but at the same time, they're cutting edge because of the amount of audio that's in there. So it takes forever.
And yet you come.
But you feel. Look, she's crying. You're hearing her crying. The film opens. It's 27 below zero, and it is because the camera woman got frostbite, and she did. And you hear her groaning. And somebody said to me, "Why is she groaning out loud, so loud?" Well, what would you do if you were standing out and it's 27 below zero, cars are coming? You would be freezing. Yeah. In The Farmer's Wife, they said that about the husband. Well, you can say that any guy once he's 35 and you two are young enough that you don't have to worry about it. But I'll tell you, after I got divorced, I had to learn how, if I'm going out, not to groan if I was going up the stairs. Because that's what you do, especially if you're a guy. You groan and you moan, you get out of your chair, you've heard your father do it. It's all true. So I capture that. Or if they cry and they sob, you care about them. It's just a thing. I've wanted to get closer and closer to my subjects on each film. And on this one, I got maybe too close. And then things happen to you, you know. Your life changes. Country Boys took me in Appalachia, Eastern Kentucky. By the time I finished that, I never wanted to do another film. 7 years, like the last 19 years have gone by. I've done 3 films. They're long. I'm lucky to get a lot of time on TV. But think about it. I'm in a different age group, you know. So I do care about what I do deeply. I come alive when I talk about it. But at the same time, that type of intimacy. And another thing is, my dad always talked to everyone to get intimacy like that in the same voice. So I'm talking to you the way I would talk to Robin. But, you know, and sometimes it gets a little rough out there. You know, I never did. One thing that inspired me on this film, when she was in front of the federal courthouse, I got busted 3 times making this series. Homeland Security near Canada, the railroad police lying on the tracks getting some shots, when a big train, a compressed shot. I love trains. And then and then the Minnesota police or the FBI in front of the federal courthouse. Nothing happened to me, but we did get, they come out, and it's very, you get a little scared. But when you're in a van for 3 days, we were pathetic, but it was exciting and fun. It gives you an edge. You're in there, you're pissing in an empty milk plastic bottle for 2 days so you don't lose your parking spot. You're shooting out of a tinted van. When the feds finally come up to you, they start laughing. They said, "You guys with the tinted vans," but I got the shots. "You guys are pathetic." It reminded them of that movie with Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez, Stakeout.
Yep.
And you're sleeping in the van, but we got the shots of her ex-husband, in front of the family during the trial, and they're in the film, part 2. They're dynamite.
We're definitely going to have to see part 2 as well. But so you mentioned that it takes you a very long time to make these films, and at sometimes you just completely washed emotionally with it. What makes you come back? What makes you want to?
When I did Country Boys, I got divorced, all that stuff happened to me. I never wanted to finish that film. I was so depressed, so down. Then I did it, but I had somebody, an AP working for me that used to have to dump cold water on me to get me up. I usually edit till 5 a.m. I just didn't have, you go through things and you go through a long film. Sometimes you lose your ambition, but you miss doing it. And for me, it's interesting. Although I don't have a lot of ambition now, I'm creatively, I have a lot of friends that are musicians, some are painters, some filmmakers, but creatively, my imagination is at its most vivid. And a lot of people get burnt out. Physically, it's harder doing long form verite because it's hours. The days are often 20 hours. When I edit, because of interruptions, I usually start editing at 6 at night till 5 in the morning. Now mixing, well, I had 60, I shouldn't say that, moving violations. Okay. So I had to, if you knew how early I have to get up and take the T, go here, take another bus, and then I'm in a mixing studio. You go through all of that stuff, but I hate the hours. Yeah. This is in post-production, but I realize how much I love doing it to switch the schedule and do the whole thing. I miss doing it, and I'm not rich, so I have to keep working. And I didn't think I'd do one after this. One, I need the money, but 2, I'll probably die doing this.
That's dedication.
I don't know if it's dedication. It's probably stupidity. But
you mentioned the intimacy and how it affects you. But as a portraitist who gets in there with their subjects and really lives with their subjects, how did that affect Robin Porbear?
She talked about that the middle of January at the National Press Tour this year in Pasadena. We went out there. And I'm not, I guess the process, no one listened to her ever. The Times broke the story. And when you have an adoptive family where the father and 2 sons, molest someone for years, and no one listens to you, and somebody finally gets busted for it. And then, you have kids and all of that, and it happens to your daughter, and then still you lose custody of your kids, this is her, and you're accused of molesting the kids while the husband is seeing the kids and has an ankle bracelet awaiting federal trial, but the tribe controls custody. It doesn't matter. So the husband's seeing the kids, and he's on trial for molesting the daughter. That couldn't happen. That's because it's native law. And so I know it doesn't sound believable. Right now, so how does it affect her? She said at the press tour, she said, imagine, somebody asked her this question about her kids being filmed, and she just said it in a succinct way. She's become a great lady. I mean, I've watched the transformation, and she has breakdowns. How can you go through that and not have a setback? Yeah. And she does. But she just said it, I can't paraphrase it, I'll try. she started talking and looking up, and all these writers were on just waiting to hear what she was saying. She starts talking about, imagine a little girl, and she starts sobbing, who no one listens to, and you keep going through this stuff, but she describes it like out of a child's book. And then somebody comes along and listens to your story. And I didn't know who she was talking about. And then I realized, oh, she's talking about me. And, I mean, I don't mean that to be flip, meaning it's like, everybody was really sort of sobbing. And, I'm emotional, and I was sort of sobbing. But I guess what I'm saying to you is it changes the whole process of having somebody listen to her and a crew, and then watching her go through that stuff. And we didn't change her. I mean, some of my subjects have said that the process changes you. I'm not trying to tell her to do anything. I mean, I might be older, but what can you possibly tell anyone to do? Hang in there? She's not asking us for advice. But the process, I think, of a crew following you around, and you forget about the camera. She knows if she goes to the bathroom how to shut the mic off. You don't even, it's second nature. And sometimes she'll leave it on, not in the bathroom, but in some other place when we're done, because if we're still recording, she wants you to hear it, or something like that. That happens with all of them in these films. So it's really, never can get enough wild sound or audio or whatever with radio mics, lavalier radio mics. And so the whole process, it's 4 or 5 years later, and she's now become like a major speaker. She testified before her tribe. The feds ended up taking control of the custody on her tribe. But whoever thought that would happen 4 years later, and it happens just before the film, not because of her testimony, because there were so many atrocities that have gone down there. So it's timely. You could say it's good luck or bad luck, but whatever it is, it's good luck for your film. But for me, it's a different process. It's like really, and for her, I hope that she's speaking publicly, U.S. attorneys, all types of audiences, and for me, this portraitist, in quotes, is starting to just really have to realize that, well, I guess even though it's airing on Frontline, that I guess I am sort of on this one, sort of like an investigative reporter, where the story caught up to my film, or vice versa, whatever it is. And that's something that's I have to get used to, because people say, well, what do you want to accomplish, they ask, with this? Well, I can honestly say now, and you're getting me fresh. I'm just on this, like I've said it in one other interview, because I just got my head together about it, is I hope that the film helps a lot of Native women and other women, because Robin wants to help other women who've been raped or abused. But on some of these reservations that I've seen, they get battered. There aren't enough police. Sometimes they don't answer. There's all types of things. To be a judge in North Dakota on her reservation, I'm not saying all reservations, guess what the criteria are? 25 years old and no criminal record. That's what it takes to become a judge on her reservation.
Really? As a 25-year-old, I wouldn't be able to take on that.
But you could.
Great. Yeah. Oh, man. So
I don't have a lot more to say.
I think you've spoken at great lengths about this, and I think your film will speak equally as much. David, thank you so much for being here at Salem Film Fest. Thank you for speaking.
Talking to you.
I enjoyed
and
talking.
Thank you, Joe.